Wow. Are you tired?
No.
Hey, that's great. Okay, we've got lots of things to do. Thank you very, very much, Jurata, for keeping to time. As I said before, I was under strict instructions that we had to finish well before 5. We will finish well before 5, and that is thanks to all of your contributions. But I've been asked to, as I did yesterday, pull everything together. And I had asked you to send me, like Erika's just asked, hundreds of emails with what the CTO should do next. And send me little slips of paper about what the CTO did next. Shall I show you the pile? Here it is. So that makes my task a whole lot more difficult. But the risk you face is that what I say may be my views rather than your views. So I've tried to pull things together. I will say some things towards the end, if I may, Secretary General, about where I think our conversation has missed out on some crucial areas that I would like to leave you with. But I've pulled together, I think, 5 ideas for you from what has been said, which I feel honourable ministers here present, people from the private sector, other government officials have suggested or implied that the CTO should do. And actually, there are many things that the CTO is already doing. So congratulations to EXCO for keeping the ideas still present. The first is there is still a huge demand for technical support and for training in many areas. And I think there are also regional issues, so the potential for more regional training. And if everything could be done online, we wouldn't be meeting here today like this. And I think you would all agree that we've gained much more from shaking hands and seeing how we dress and chatting and drinking glasses of water and coffee and tea than we do if we do that online. So the potential for regional and secondly, the potential for very specific training. However, in the training field, there is huge amounts of this available globally. The ITU does training. The Caribbean Telecommunications Union's done training. I've been there, I've done it at St. Kitts for you on occasions in the past. The CTO does training. Industry organizations do training. So perhaps a role for the CTO is to try and collate some training. The latest offer I had was I'm chair of the advisory board of United Nations Union Institute in Macau, and they have a new portfolio of training. And I thought, why is everybody reinventing the wheel? So the potential is for you to draw on the best training in the world to provide that for the governments that you serve. So that was the first point, perhaps, enhancing the technology, technical support and training. The second is sharing lessons learned. I have learned so much from every one of you with whom I've spoken or I've heard to about what you are doing. Some examples of good practice, some examples of very bad practice, some examples of what you think is best practice, and I'll come back to that later. But sharing practice, being open in dialogue. Wouldn't it be wonderful for every member country of the CTO, every company sector member, could periodically just share small case studies that the CTO could post on their website or disseminate amongst other members. So I think there is potential for sharing lessons learned. That would require us all. I don't need more work, I'm sure you don't, but it would require us to be willing to share these. So that's a commitment you might like to make. And I very much hope that all contributions to this event will be made freely and openly available. Maybe for just the members of the CTO to give added value to the CTO, but I would hope perhaps under a Creative Commons license or more open than that. So technical support and training, build on what you've done in the past, drive it forward. Sharing lessons learned. We can all learn all the time, and as I get older, the more I need to learn, I realize. Thirdly, There is brokering partnerships. Partnerships is something I seem to be involved in for at least the last 30 years, and I've written quite a lot about how partnerships can work, particularly in the digital tech sector. Perhaps the CTO could develop partnership kind of templates or ways which both sides in a partnership can commit to delivering digital technology interventions. Most partnerships are only partnerships in name rather than in real practice. I think of so many UN so-called partnerships that nobody signs a memorandum of understanding or anything. It's just based on pledges or something. That's not a partnership. Partnerships are about being willing to give something in return for expecting something as well. And so partnerships work where you say what you're willing to give, but what you want to receive out of it, being open and honest and building in trust. And a second point there, Bernadette said early on, if you can remember, and it was only yesterday, that please involve the CTO in the ongoing discussions you're having. It's been wonderful seeing members of the private sector companies, members of the host government and our ministers meeting with you and talking with you about arrangements. But let the CTO carry on facilitating. And don't forget that the CTO held these 2 days, which exhausted us all. So technical support, sharing lessons learned, brokering partnerships. And fourthly, I picked up on some specific issues, just a couple, but it struck me were particularly important. In my earlier comments, I mentioned the SIDS, small island developing states, who have very specific problems. But in a couple of the comments that I heard you say, that cybersecurity is particularly important in your countries. Cybersecurity is important everywhere. And traditionally, the CTO has had amazingly good cooperation with what was the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, now Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, who have huge cybersecurity expertise, and our NCA, our National Crime Agency. And I think that is an area where the British government, but also working with the CTO, could make huge impact. I was horrified by some of the figures of cybercrime that you were reporting. That is a critical issue, and I think many small island states don't have the capacity to tackle that. So that was one area that I found interesting. The next area, the second one, and there are only two, and again, it's something that often keeps coming up, and after an emergency, after some critical incident, everyone goes, we must do something about it, and then somehow it gets forgotten. But it's in emergency and disaster solutions and making systems resilient. And again, we heard a number of countries talking about this. But we think of Ukraine after the Russian invasion. We think of the Turkey-Syria border, but so many. We think of the floods in Pakistan not so long ago. We think of volcanoes in Montserrat. The list goes on. But let us make our digital systems resilient, really resilient, because in emergencies, in critical incidents, they're actually what we need. I'll have a whole bottle later. And the fifth is let us all help each other. That was the big message that I took out of this event. Let us help each other. And we could do that when we know each other better, when we trust each other better. And that is what these 2 days have been about. But I'm old enough to probably say this. I'm utterly fed up with the amount of duplication, overlap, replication, competition between UN agencies and other agencies, between different Commonwealth agencies, between, you name it, you know what I'm talking about. That has to stop. The waste of resources that goes into that. Let us work together. It doesn't take much. It takes perhaps being a little more humble and not believing we know all the answers. And I was struck by something somebody said who isn't here now. And I'm going to lighten the tone a little bit because you've been sitting too long and you need to get up. How many people here have ever played rugby? Or would admit to it? We have some great Kenyans. Can you come and join me, sir? Yeah, because I've played rugby. I before the game went anyway, and I broke too many bones in my body. And I would love. And I love a story that the Honourable Minister from Samoa said. And it was on this theme of let us help each other. And he told us the story, the more torches that the fishermen have when, come on, Juma, you can pretend you played rugby, that when they go out fishing at night, the more torches they had, the more fish they caught. And do you remember the words he said? The words he said, and you're going to have to remember this because I want us all to get up and we will lead. I want you to say these words, which basically in translation mean the more torches. And that's the more of us working together. And it is Ola Teli Osulu. Is that right? Will that do? Can you improve my translation? So Ola Teli Osulu. Come here. And we can pretend we're sort of the front row. Or I was going to say we could have a Samoan haka. Yeah. So I'm not going to ask my brothers to do a Samoan haka quite. Yeah. Ola Teli Osulu. So we'll say that. And then stand up and we all say it. Ola Teli Osulu. Ola Teli Osulu. Ola Teli Osulu. One more time. Ola Teli Osulu. Well done. Thanks. Excuse me, madam, but so let me then, there are just one final set of points I'd like to make. Now you've relaxed a bit. The last session was, to me, about the only session that was honest. And honest in one way. They were all honest, but honest in this way. And again, maybe a show of hands. We can have here, on the left, say, technology is all good and wonderful. Technology is going to transform the world for the better. Technology is the future. Technology will deliver good for everyone. Over here, your right hand, technology actually, if you think about it, does more harm than good. Think of email. Some of you are almost as old as I am, and therefore remembered life before email.
Yes.
Emails are the biggest time waster anybody has ever invented, aren't they? That's ignoring the violence, the online harassment, being trolled, violence particularly against women and children, pornography. So, if you're on this side, put your left hand up. Left hand up, who thinks it's all perfect and wonderful and we're going to make the world a better place?
There's a middle category.
Yeah. Anyone right over here? And that exercise would partly show that we're not at the extreme, but we're honest to each other. We're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
The key message to take away is that to enable the good, this side, to be achieved, we have to reduce the harms. We have to mitigate the harms that digital technology can cause. And I heard what Bevel said. I don't know if anyone picked up. What were the words he used? Is digital technology our master or our servant? Should be. But think of what, he's from the Caribbean. Master and servant, what does that language suggest to you? Slavery. And I've written quite a lot recently about what I'm increasingly calling digital enslavement. Think about, when did you last spend a day not shackled to your mobile device? Let alone a week being human in nature. Whose interest does that serve? Whose interest does it serve? Are we becoming increasingly enslaved to the digital barons? And letting digital tech be our master We aspire to it being of use to us, to changing the world, to making it a better place. Honourable ministers, can I inspire, beg, do whatever it is I have to do to ask you to ensure that it is indeed what you aspire to. It is your servant, and it is the servant of the poorest and the most marginalised in your communities. That is what I would like you to take away. That is what I would like you to write on that bit of paper I asked you to write and share with a friend at the beginning. What am I going to do differently, having been here at this event organised by the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organisation with the support of the British government? If you haven't done that, I'm going to do some boring thanks. Just do it now. And ladies, stick it on your mirrors when you're doing your makeup. Gentlemen, stick it on your mirrors when you're doing your shaving, those of you without beards. Have it as your screensaver on your mobile device. What are you going to different? Because otherwise, you've wasted 2 days of your time. We must. These issues are so important. We must enable digital tech to be the servant of the poorest as we, if we're ministers in our governments, the private sector will never deliver on it for everybody. Governments, you have to remember the equity principle and put the last first. And thank you, the minister who listened to my point about language. And the rest of you, remember, there are no best practices unless you want to be enslaved to them. There are good practices. The digital divide is a false set of terminologies. I could go on, but I've said enough. Finally, then, I want to talk about thanking some people, and the Secretary-General will say more thanks subsequently. But I think, wow, what an event. It's been very, very special to me. It's been lovely to meet old friends and meet new ones. But that event would have been impossible without Bernadette, the Secretary-General of the CTO and the ExCo of the CTO. So please will you actually stand and clap to thank her. Secondly, the CTO staff, I think we'd all agree, I haven't heard of any complaints, so I think we'd all agree they have been absolutely wonderful in pulling this event together. And anyone who's arranged an event, I'll name them. Okay. I'll say, especially Rob Heyman, who leads on events, but also, yeah, for Rob. But everybody in the CTO has helped and contributed, and I'll name them. I hope I get them all right. Dorothy Latang, Nikisha, Leonard, Irene, Saiful, Riyadh, Babatunda, James, and Steve. Enormous vote of thanks to all of them. And the CTO have also magically brought in some other people. Arnaldo, I think you've probably been the busiest person wandering around. And I joked to him, you know, try and find a good photograph here. I move around too much, it's impossible. But let's thank Arnaldo. And the photographs will be ready next week. And then final group who the CTO pulled together were the rapporteurs, Anna and Jeff. And again, we hope to have the report within about 2.5 or 3 weeks. And that will be available on the site. So thank you, Anna and Jeff. But there are also people we may not have seen, people here in the Royal Society. It's an enormous privilege, and this is the most, I was going to say believe it or not, but perhaps I shouldn't have done that. It's the most prestigious scientific place in Britain. You probably saw the photographs downstairs and around of the leading scientists over the last 300 years. It's an amazing place, although I would say, and I'm saying it publicly, British science is not what it once was. It is still a place where really important scientific ideas are discussed and is moving forward working in the digital field. But particularly to thank Cassandra, Mariana, Liam, Louis, and the tech team here. So, And before I say the next bit, I hope nobody's had food poisoning since they arrived, because I thought the food was delicious, and we should thank John and all of the catering team. So if there's anyone from the Royal Society here, please could you pass on our immense gratitude and thanks. Above all, it is you who've made this event. It's you who've enabled me to have such fun being the master of ceremonies. I hope I haven't been too vicious and I've kept the ball rolling. Secretary General, over to you now with your closing words.